Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We have more gaming and PlayStation news, rumours and leaks to go over. If you enjoyed today's video, please show your support by hitting that like button. As you may have already seen, starting yesterday, Sony confirmed that the price of the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro is going up in the US. The new prices are as follows. The standard PlayStation 5 will now cost $549.99 US. Digital Edition is priced at $499, and the PS5 Pro, that one's going to set you back $749. According to Isabel Tomatis, who is the Vice President of Global Marketing at Sony Interactive Entertainment. The decision comes down to the challenging economic environment. Well, that's the official story, and it probably has some bearing on it. I mean, the PlayStation 5 originally launched in November 2020, right in the middle of a global pandemic. That was the COVID-19 pandemic. And despite all of the challenges, global shipping delays, factory shutdowns, and unstable supply chain, Sony managed to have one of the most successful launches ever for a console product. But as many of you might remember, it wasn't easy to get your hands on a PlayStation 5. For about a year and a half, there were stock shortages, which made the console almost impossible to buy at retail price. Scalpers swooped in, bought up most of the units, and sold them online at ridiculous markups. So some people were paying hundreds of dollars more just to secure a console. Since then, Sony has released multiple versions of the PlayStation 5, including slimmer models and the PlayStation 5 Pro version, which is designed for higher performance. And if you want a disk drive for the newer models, that is extra. I suppose the PlayStation 5 price increase was inevitable. We all knew the increase was coming at some point, especially as Xbox's consoles were increased in price. The Nintendo Switch 2 launched at a very high price point, and of course we've seen the Xbox handheld branded products also extremely highly priced. So I suppose those that managed to pick up a PS5 or a PS5 Pro before the price increase, I suppose you can count yourself lucky as you got it for the price you did. I don't expect the price to be coming down anytime soon though, especially with GTA 6 and the console bundles coming out next year. What a strange console generation this really is. 5 years into this generation and console prices are more expensive than when they released in 2020 for Xbox and PlayStation. It's insane. Anyway, let's move on to some bitterly disappointing news and a trend which a lot of people just do not want to see continue. So for the first time in the game's franchise's history, a mainline Gears of War title is coming to PlayStation 5. For almost 2 decades, Gears of War has been seen as one of Xbox's flagship exclusives, a series that has helped define the Xbox 360 era. And now here we are with the series crossing over to the Sony console. Gears of War Reloaded is basically a remaster of a remaster. And let me explain. Back in 2015, Microsoft released Gears of War Ultimate Edition, which was already a remaster of the original 2006 game. Reloaded takes that Ultimate Edition and updates it once again for modern hardware, higher resolution, smoother performance, and some technical upgrades. So yes, it looks and runs better, but this isn't a brand new game. It's more like a polished up version of a classic. But while that sounds exciting on paper, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to this on the PlayStation 5, there is a catch. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that leaves a very sour taste in players' mouths, and it's downright frustrating and annoying, and it will definitely piss off PlayStation players who look forward to playing games that are fully available on disc. Now, reports have surfaced online, and they're being backed up with photos that the physical PlayStation 5 copy doesn't actually have the full game on the disc. Instead, what you're buying is just a license key. You pop the disc in and all it does is unlock a 64 gigabyte download. That's the size of the game, 64 gigabytes, give or take. And there's literally nothing on the disc. So let that sink in. You're buying a disc, but the disc doesn't have the game on. So what's the point then? What's the point of actually buying this disc? For collectors, maybe the box art and the actual case is nice to have on a shelf, but functionally, there's no real difference between buying a digital or physical copy in this instance. You still have to download the entire game. On top of that, you'll need the disc in the tray every time you play it if you opt for the physical version. And doesn't that feel like it's missing the point of physical media? And to make matters worse, the game hasn't had the smoothest lead up as well to the release. The game's beta period got a lot of criticism from players, people complaining about the technical issues, and more importantly, the lack of meaningful upgrades to a game that at its core is nearly 20 years old. Now let's zoom out for a second, because this just isn't about Gears of War on its own. The whole disc with no game data situation is becoming way too common in the gaming industry. Publishers often skip putting the full game on discs, relying instead on downloads. And why is that? Maybe it's cheaper, maybe it's easier to do, and they assume that most players are connected to the internet anyway. There is that. There's also the notion that if you are tied into a digital copy, it makes it more difficult to perhaps resell the physical disc. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't know why this is the case as we seem to be moving forward. More and more games are digital downloads, even though there is a physical disc. But if you think about it, what happens if you live in an area with poor internet? Or maybe you don't want to waste storage space downloading a game that could have just been fully available on the disc in the first place. The PlayStation 5 discs can hold up to 100 gigabytes of data, so there's absolutely enough room for Reloaded to be fully available on the disc. It's not acceptable that there's nothing on there. It's not a technical limitation. This is 100% choice, and it's a bloody lazy one too. And it makes you wonder, are publishers cutting corners here? Some companies will go out of their way to do the opposite. We know most PlayStation first-party games are available on disc. We know most PlayStation games available on the platform are on disc. CD Projekt Red made a massive point about saying that the Cyberpunk 2077 port for Nintendo Switch 2 was 100% entirely on the cartridge. 0 downloads required to play that game specifically on the Switch platform. So it's proof that it can be done if a developer and publisher wants to do it. They can put full data on a disc. So the question really is, why didn't Microsoft or the Gears team do the same for Reloaded? And at the end of the day, Gears of War Reloaded on PlayStation 5 is still huge. It's a massive moment in gaming. Seeing such an iconic Xbox title make its way over to Sony's console really shows how much the industry has changed. But it's hard not to feel let down by how the physical release has been handled in this instance. Because if a disc doesn't have the game on it, is it really worth buying? I'm bitterly disappointed personally that the game data is not on the disc. It's not the first time we've seen a game ported from Microsoft Xbox that doesn't have the full game on disc. And if this report does turn out to be true, then it's incredibly disappointing. I definitely will not be buying it if the data is not on disc fully. Instead, I'll have to just wait eventually until it hits sale. And then maybe I will pick it up in the future, maybe digitally, maybe on disc, but it's the same damn thing, right? It's still a digital download. So, don't know. I'll have to watch this space, but what a letdown. What an absolute letdown. How do you feel about this, guys? Let me know your thoughts and let's move on. Now, it's all change at Bungie once again. Bungie, the studio behind Destiny and the upcoming game Marathon, has been going through some major changes. Pete Parsons, who's been the CEO since 2016, is officially stepping down. During his time at the helm, Bungie has gone through one of the most turbulent periods in its history. There have been big successes, but also a lot of controversy too. And with Destiny sales slowing down and Marathon being delayed, Sony has decided to step in and take more control of the studio. Remember, Sony bought Bungie back in 2022 for over $3 billion. And at the time, Bungie was promised a level of independence from PlayStation's other studios. But clearly, that independence hasn't worked out the way Sony hoped. In his farewell message, Parsons talked about how proud he was of the games they built and the communities that they formed around them. But now the torch is being passed to Justin Truman, Bungie's former chief development officer. And Truman, he's got a tough job ahead of him. Not only is Marathon delayed, but the studio has also faced a plagiarism scandal with some of its artwork. In his first message as CEO, Truman acknowledged that Bungie hasn't always gotten it right, but he promised that moving forward the focus will be on creating experiences that truly matter to the players. And the big question here is, can Bungie rebuild trust with its community and deliver the expectations set for Marathon and future Destiny content? Well, if Sony want change, you've got to start at the top and then cascade the changes down through the rest of the teams. And as Sony moves Bungie even closer to its first-party studios lineup, let's hope they can turn it around at Bungie, because at the moment, from the outside looking in, it really hasn't gone down well, and it could be argued that it's one of Sony's worst acquisitions ever to date. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and let's move on, because this one really caught me by surprise. EVO, which is the Evolution Championship Series, is the world's biggest fighting game tournament. It's been a huge part of competitive gaming culture for decades. Sony, which has co-owned EVO since 2021, has now sold its ownership stake to Nodwin Gaming. Nodwin is backed by Sony's parent company, but is owned by Nazara Technologies. So while Sony isn't a co-owner anymore, it's not entirely out of the picture. In fact, Sony has agreed to stay on as a global sponsor through until 2028. That means PlayStation will still have a big presence at EVO, showing off new products, new controllers, and upcoming fighting games. This year, for example, attendees got hands-on time with Marvel Token Fighting Souls and even tried out Sony's new Flex Strike Fight Stick. Phil Rosenberg of PlayStation explained that when Sony first bought into EVO, the goal was to help the fighting gaming community grow and get more attention worldwide. Now, by handing over ownership to Nodwin, they hope that EVO will expand even further into new regions, bringing in more players and more fans. Meanwhile, Nodwin's leadership has promised to respect EVO's legacy while also pushing it forward to the next generation. So the big takeaway here is that Sony may no longer own EVO, but it's still deeply connected to it. It's an interesting move by Sony not being a part owner of EVO moving forward. Perhaps they don't believe there's enough room for growth or return on investment in the competitive fighting scene as there is in live service gaming. Who knows? It's certainly an interesting step change from Sony, but let me know your thoughts and let's move on. Now, GSC Game World has officially announced Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl will be launching on PlayStation 5 on November the 20th. It's not the first release for the game. It actually released on PC and Xbox in late 2024. But with the PlayStation 5 release, a whole new audience will finally get their chance to step into the zone. And there's excitement if you own a PlayStation 5 Pro, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But for anyone who doesn't know Stalker 2, it takes place in an alternate version of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. That's an area that's already infamous in real life because of the 1986 nuclear disaster. In the game's world, however, there's a second explosion in 2006, twisting the zone into something even more dangerous. You play as a lone stalker, a survivor, scavenger, and explorer, navigating across 64 square kilometers of a seamless open world. It's not just a big number on paper, it's a massive radioactive landscape filled with hazards, mysteries, and enemies. And the enemies, they're not just generic mutants. Each one has different behavior models. Some of them roam around on their own, others hunt in groups, and certain regions have terrifying layers where you'll run into more than you bargained for. But the most valuable artifacts within those zones are hidden in the deadliest of places. And we're talking about anomalies, traps, devastating environmental hazards. They can all kill you in an instant. So the question is, do you risk everything all for fortune and answers, or do you play it safe and probably miss out on some of the zone's biggest secrets? And what makes the PlayStation 5 release even more exciting is the platform-specific upgrades. This isn't just a simple port. The game has been fully optimized for the PlayStation console. PlayStation 5 players will get features like adaptive triggers and haptic feedback through the DualSense controller. On top of that, the Tempest 3D audio system will make wandering the zone feel scary, eerie, and real. When you hear something moving in the dark, you'll want to stop and listen very, very carefully. And if you're playing on the PlayStation 5 Pro, expect Pro enhancements because there's more visual upgrades. We're talking sharper shadows, better reflections, more realistic lighting, and improved rendering for clouds and fog. All of this helps bring the zone alive in a way that makes it feel dangerous, unpredictable, and alive. It's a big step forward from the rocky launch of the game in 2024, and it shows how much work GSC Game World has put into polish and expand the experience. I'm looking forward to the game. Of course I am. Let me know if you're planning on picking this up on the PlayStation 5 Pro. However, I do want to understand if the game data is fully on disc, because if it's not, I'll miss it. If it's available fully on disc, I'll be playing it. Anyway, let's move on. Konami has released the final launch trailer of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater just 1 week before the game officially drops on August the 28th. And for many fans, this remake felt like something that might never actually happen. And let's be honest, Konami has been quiet with some of its biggest franchises for many years. And even though leaks like the infamous Nvidia GeForce Now list, which gave people hope, it wasn't until we saw it announced that it actually felt real and believable. So for those who don't know, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is often considered one of the best entries in the Metal Gear series. It tells the origin story of Big Boss, the legendary soldier, with a mix of survival gameplay, stealth action, and some iconic moments in the game series. So the fact that we're getting a faithful, fully rebuilt version is huge, and based on its launch trailer, it looks like Konami is doing right by fans. That's not all. After launch, players can look forward to the new Fox Hunt multiplayer mode set to release later this fall. Unfortunately, it will not support crossplay, which is a bit of a letdown, but still, it's an exciting addition that expands the game beyond just a single-player story mode. If you've never played the original Snake Eater, you technically have 1 week to try it before the remake launches, and honestly, even 20 years later, it still holds up as an incredible experience. But if you want the modern, rebuilt version, August the 28th is the date to circle in your calendar. So, let's move on. Now, Gamescom is one of the biggest gaming events in the world, and it's a stage where companies want to show their very best. But for Microsoft, which has faced layoffs, internal restructuring, and pressure to prove the strength of Xbox's future, Gamescom 2025 should have been the perfect moment to impress fans and build confidence. But then, something happened, an embarrassing moment. During their showcase, Xbox showed off a live demo of Dying Light the Beast. everything seemed absolutely fine until the game suddenly crashed. And that's when people noticed something. The demo wasn't even running on an Xbox console at all. It was running on Steam. Now, to be fair, it's common in the industry for developers to run previews on PC hardware during the development. It's easier, it's flexible, and games are often designed first for PC and then optimized later for consoles. But the problem here is that Xbox didn't mention it, not once. They didn't say this game was running on Steam. They gave the impression that it was running on Xbox. If the game hadn't crashed, the audience would have assumed that they were watching the Xbox version of this game. It's a small detail, sure, but in the middle of all the challenges Xbox is facing, it's not a great look, and it raises questions. When Microsoft is trying to show the strength of the Xbox, what message does it send when games on display are not even running on their own console? It's misleading again. And Dying Light the Beast itself is on the way, and the standalone spin-off is now scheduled to release on September the 19th after a delay from its original August date. And while fans wait, Techland has been keeping Dying Light 2 updated, recently improving Parker stamina and making quality of life changes. So despite the awkward Gamescom moment, there's still a lot of content coming for players interested in this franchise. So let's move on from this embarrassing moment for Xbox and talk about how something fans have been waiting for what feels like forever. And that is Hollow Knight SilkSong. After years of delays, rumors and speculation, Team Cherry has finally confirmed a release date. Now, SilkSong will launch on September the 4th, 2025. Now, it's coming out on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4, Series X, Series S, and Xbox One. It's obviously coming to PC, and it will be launching on Switch 1 and Switch 2, so it's pretty much going everywhere. The game originally started as an expansion for Hollow Knight, but quickly grew into a full sequel of its own. This time you'll play as Hornet, the prince's protector of Hollow Nest, who sets out on a journey through a brand new kingdom shaped by silk and song. Players will travel across diverse environments, which include coral forests, mossy grottos, gilded cities, and misty moors, all the way to a shining citadel at the peak of the world. And along the way, you'll uncover new abilities, craft new tools, and face more than 150 unique enemies, including beasts, assassins, knights, kings, and monsters, each designed to challenge you in different ways throughout your journey. And of course, all of this is set to a soundtrack by award-winning composer Christopher Larkin, whose music helped make the original Hollow Knight unforgettable. After all these years of hype and anticipation, can SilkSong live up to the enormous expectation fans have built around it? What do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments, and let's move on. Unfortunately, the latest news isn't good for Bioshock 4. According to a Bloomberg report, Cloud Chamber, the studio working on the new Bioshock 4 game, has laid off around 30% of its staff, which is roughly 80 people. And with that, Bioshock 4 has been delayed once again. This isn't the first time the project has faced trouble. Earlier this year, the game reportedly failed an internal review, which led to Take-Two to reshuffle Cloud Chamber's leadership. Now, Rod Ferguson, who previously worked on the Diablo series at Blizzard, has stepped in to take charge. In an email to staff, 2K president David Ishmael explained that while the core gameplay ideas are strong, some fundamental parts of what makes a Bioshock game Bioshock were just not working. So the team is going back to rework those elements, even if it means delaying the project further and downsizing the team. It's worth remembering that the new Bioshock has technically been in some form of development for about a decade now. Multiple reports, multiple versions, and lots of lost time. The most recent reset happened back in 2022. Originally, the game was targeted for late 2026 or early 2027, but now it's unclear when we are going to be seeing this game. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick has insisted that Bioshock will eventually return, but for fans, patience is wearing thin. And it leads to another question. In an industry that moves really fast, will players still be excited for Bioshock 4 whenever this game is finally ready? Let me know your thoughts on the articles discussed in the video today. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.